Priorities Committee meeting of January 22nd, 2024. We will begin this meeting with a call to order and the acknowledgement of traditional lands. If I could ask everybody who is able to please stand. We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also acknowledge the enduring presence of all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Miigwech. You may be seated. At this time, we are on item number 2. This is approval of the agenda. Trustee Pay, I'm under the impression you wish to ask for a change to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. I want to insert a noted motion to the agenda.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, so I want to move motion that is so can be discussed for next
So
PPC
it's just,
meeting.
you're not moving the motion, you're just letting us know that there's a notice of motion.
That's right.
Correct?
That's right. That's right. Yes, I'm not moving the motion. Just put a notice of motion today.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Pay. And I would just alert trustees, it is in your blue folder. And I'm just going to double check with staff that's been sent to trustees who are online. Okay, it's being sent to trustees who are online joining us via Zoom. That's being sent to you right now. So you should see it in your inboxes in a moment. So that will be added in the record of this meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder, assuming there's no other changes to the agenda for this evening? Thank you, Trustees Dawson and Vice Chair Shen. All those in favor, we'll just do show of hands or say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, that has carried. Next, I'm going to move to declarations of possible conflict of interest, and I'm going to look around the room and online. If there are any trustees who wish to declare a conflict of interest, now is the time. Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to item number 4, which is delegations, of which we have a number this evening. So we're going to have I'm sure, a lovely afternoon of hearing from the public on a number of different items today. I would just remind everybody how this works. You will have 5 minutes to speak. And then trustees, we just ask you to hold on for a second because trustees may have questions of clarification only that they may ask. And trustees get 3 minutes to ask questions if they wish of clarification. I would just remind everybody that the board's code of conduct applies to all meetings, including this one. So we want to ensure that all our dialogue remains respectful and in line with the values of the Toronto District School Board. So with that, we will get started. We have a number of delegations this evening, as well as some written delegations. So trustees will be sent a list of that. I think it's already been sent, including the written ones. And we will start with our first delegation, which I believe is in person, and it's Marcin Pesky. And please come to the table. And if you're from Save Our Schools, and this is regarding this Central Student Interest Program's implementation update.
No.
Sorry, not.
Literature review on meritocratic perceptions of public education and diverse learning opportunities, quotations and plagiarism. TDSB research.
Okay, so have I said your name correctly, Mr. Pesky?
Yes, it's very difficult to say my name correctly. So.
Okay, I'm happy to give it a shot if you like.
That's
Okay.
Marcin Pesky if you want, but it's perfectly
Okay,
fine.
Marcin.
Marcin.
Okay, I can get that. Marcin Pesky. Well, thank you very much for joining us. So there is a timer on the screen above you. You have 5 minutes. You'll see it up in this corner. we have one above you as well that we can watch. So please go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm Professor of Economics at the University of Toronto, and I want to talk about plagiarism and fraudulent creation of these documents. It's a literature review on meritocratic perceptions. It's an official TDSB document that was presented to the Planning and Priorities during its May meeting last year. It was the second of 3 parts of Central Student Interest Programs report. The first part was devoted to the update on running of the first year of the lottery, and the last part was that legal opinion to explain that the lottery does not violate the Charter of Rights. It is not clear why this literature review on meritocracy was actually commissioned. I believe that it was to provide an intellectual foundation for lottery admissions. The author is TDSB Research and Development. The document has 12 pages, 8 pages with around 90 references. In bold, reproduction of this document for use in the Toronto District School Board is encouraged, and every reasonable precaution has been taken to trace the owners of copyrighted material and to make due acknowledgement. So there are 3 problems here. The first is that this statement is a lie. This entire document, prepared by the TDSB Research Department, first, 55% of the text is plagiarized. 20 of the quotations, the sources, are made up. They are fake. To give you an example how it works, you can go to page 6, and then you will see the document quotes Kang 2005, Ethnic Differentials in Education in Singapore, Asia Pacific Education Review. This paper does not exist. Now, the same sentence next to the citation, their public examination results continue to lag behind those of their Chinese counterparts, is copied without attribution from Lim and Tan, published in Curriculum Inquiry 2018. Lim and Tan quote Kang 2005, Creating Educational Dreams, book, completely different publisher. There are many examples like this. What likely happened is that TDSB Research lifted sentences from real existing journals and then lazily used the AI tool to create references. As many students and undergrads know, ChatGPT tries very hard to be helpful, so much that it makes up a fake but correctly sounding reference. What it shows is that TDSB Research actually did not read those papers that they are quoting. That's a basic violation of research integrity. Second, the document is deficient even without plagiarism and fake quotations. Ostensibly a neutral review, it is extremely ideologically biased. Every positive argument for meritocracy is presented by a negative source that immediately proceeds to dismiss it. That is shoddy and unserious academic work. Academic writing is supposed to be opinionated, but it must honestly discuss opposing arguments. Instead, TDSB fights strawmen. There is nothing here about peer effects, ability tracking, about the role of incentives, all subject to huge cross-field academic research. I'm very happy to suggest some introductory reading to TDSB Research Department to open their horizons, like Google Scholar I would start with. The writing is bad. There are many English mistakes. There are paragraphs with sentences that do not make sense in this order. I really encourage you to read this. There is a bizarre mischaracterization and dismissal of public education in Singapore, one of the best school systems in the world, that is difficult to explain by anything else than casual racism. Third, the reaction. Why is the only reaction a brief statement from TDSB spokesman without any follow-up 7 months later? The research arm of the largest educational institution in the country, which we trust to teach students how to think critically, makes up sources and is not able to exert a minimum effort to justify, to research a policy that affects tens of thousands of students. How can we trust that they base their actions and policies on science and evidence rather than good intentions and ideological bias? You, Madam Chair, you did less than nothing. I wanted to delegate on this topic last June, but you actually blocked me. I believe that your goal was to protect TDSB staff from my feedback, but it's not your job to cover their mistakes. They are public employees, they need to work in proper conditions, but they also need to be held accountable by people like you. A part of the problem is I wonder whether trustees, who are mostly not teachers and do not really have this experience of catching a cheating student, know how demoralizing it is for the teacher, for the student, and for all other students. There is a huge concern in academia, in schools right now about use of AI tools. Everybody is working super hard to ChatGPT prove their assignments. And this is not helpful. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask questions?
Yes, you may
Or
ask
make
a
some-
question of clarification, Trustee Pei. Please go ahead.
Okay. First question I would ask Professor Paskey. So could you give me example what happened if this is some research done by University of Toronto? So what's university as an institution, what they're going to proceed with this kind of plagiarism or fraudulent report?
I've never sat on the relevant committees. I caught students cheating once, and I had to report it further. But I don't. So I know that University of Toronto has academic integrity policy, which something like this, of course, it would violate it. I think if it happened first time, there would be some warning. Second time or more, that probably could lead to expulsion. It probably depends on how serious it would be. But these are students, right? Like these are people who do not really know how to make correct decisions.
If I recall correctly, in the past, once TDSB director who did a plagiarism in his PhD thesis, I remember she had to resign from the position of DOE, and also I think OCT took his license away, and he was stripped of his PhD degree as well. So have you heard anything like that happen to a University of Toronto?
Trustee Pei, I would just remind you, this is questions of clarification
Yeah.
on the delegation. Clarification on the delegation. Thank you.
Okay. All right then. Okay. I have another question for Professor Paskey. So you said the research done by this report really doesn't represent any of the topic they want to talk about. Is that correct?
I'm not sure whether I said that. There are a couple of parts in the report. There is a part on meritocracy, and there is a part of the diverse learning. What I said is that the part on the meritocracy is very, very, very biased. And the parts on the diverse learning opportunities, I really encourage the trustees to read. I don't know if any of you actually try to read this report, because my impression is that this was actually prepared to be, not to be read. It's absolutely horrible. It's just very, very badly written. It does not make any sense.
Okay, my last question is, what are your recommendation to the board?
I mean, I would like to follow the same, I would like to understand, first of all, why does it happen? Whether this is a common practice I mean, it's easy to deal with a plagiarism, right? Like I can expect that the board staff will be very careful about this type of things and using AI tools. But I would like to know whether they can do also quality academic research. It is important.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Paskey, for your delegation.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Pei. Your time has ended.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Professor Paskey, for your delegation.
Do we have any other trustees on the list? I'd like to pass the chair so that I can ask a question.
Go ahead, Trustee Jocelyn.
Mr. Pesky, can you just explain to trustees the reason why you were denied the request to delegate the last time you asked?
Very happily.
What was the answer you were given?
Very happily. So first, I just wanted to say that
Can you just answer the question, please?
it is a polite habit to address people with a professional title with their professional title, if it is possible. I know that you use this courtesy to other people, so if you could call me Professor Pesky, it would be I would be grateful. The reason why you denied me, the reason why you denied me, there is a rule that the delegates cannot delegate twice on the same topic within 12 months. Now, I did delegate to GPC in March 2023 on the topic of Central Student Interest Programs. Chairperson Chernoslin decided that this topic, the one that I wanted to delegate today, was the same as Central Student Interest Program. I don't remember delegating in March on this topic. One of the reasons I did not delegate in March on this topic is because this report was not written back then. So I could not have delegated on this topic in March 2023. This report was presented in May. Now you refused to delegate, stopped me from delegating in June 2023. Is it fair description?
Please address through me.
I'm sorry.
All right. Is there a follow-up question, Trustee Chancellor?
There is, through the chair. I would just ask, what was the topic that you provided when you filled out the form to delegate?
Very good. That's a very good question. I provided that I would like to talk about Central Student Interest Program Implementation Update. The reason I provided this topic...
Thank you for answering my question.
Mr. Chair, can you please allow me to answer the question? It's not respectful to cut me off in this way.
Okay.
I still have 56 seconds.
Go ahead.
I would like to finish this. The reason I provide it is because delegation rules say very clearly that when the topic changes substantially, then I can have another delegation. Now, I believe that fraud, plagiarism, and fake quotations change the topic substantially. Maybe some people don't, but this seems to me quite important.
Thank you.
Now, you knew exactly what I wanted.
Please
because you
address
asked,
through me.
Sorry. Chairperson Lin knew exactly what I wanted to talk about because I explained to her when the delegates' email came back with saying that I cannot delegate, I explained exactly that I want to talk on this topic.
Thank you. Any further clarification questions on that? Just to clarify to you, delegate, as well as anybody else listening, regardless of if there is the changes to that particular theme, if somebody delegated on a particular topic, the same topic might be evolving throughout the year. It won't be, if you have applied to speak on the same topic, you would not be able to speak more than once within the year, right? That's the rule. There's always things that will change. If I delegate on a topic, there might be 2 months down the road, there might be some changes to that particular topic. That doesn't mean I can come every time something changes throughout the year to delegate, just to make sure that we have enough. And there's always possibilities of other members of the communities raising the same things as well. So hopefully different people can bring the delegations to the table. All right, I'm going to pass the chair back to Chair Chancellor.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you for coming today. Thank you for your time, and thank you for providing your input to the committee. We will move on to the second delegation. This is regarding item number 7.1. This is the attendance boundary change for Wedgwood Junior School and West Glen. We have Andrea Thompson, who's the parent and co-chair of Wedgwood Junior School Council. I believe on the phone today. Am I correct? And she's with us? Okay. Andrea, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. So the way this works is you have 5 minutes, and then if you could just stay on the line, because it's possible trustees may have questions of clarification for you.
Yeah, I just heard the last ones. Thank you. Hello, my name is Andrea Thompson. I am a caregiver of 2 children at Wedgwood Junior School. My youngest just started JK this year, and my eldest is in grade 3. I am the chair of the Wedgwood Family and School Association, and I am a representative of the Toronto School Caregiver Coalition. And I'm here to speak about the issues of overcrowding at Wedgwood and the proposed boundary change to address this. In the 5 years I've been part of the Wedgwood community, I have seen the school deteriorate substantially under the pressure of an increasing student body size. It is easy to miss from the outside, but once in the school, you can see it struggle to function safely and effectively with so many students to accommodate. In the 2022-2023 school year, I attended a meeting which Dan McLean, our trustee, joined. He informed us that the TDSB knew things were bad at Wedgwood with the overcrowding and that it was likely to get worse before it improved. We were projected to reach 190% capacity in the next 5 years and told to expect approximately 15 to 20 portables on our school's yard to accommodate this. One TDSB architect even referred to it to me as a portable encampment. Frankly, this is a depressing future for our children and faculty. We already have approximately 20 female staff using only 2 toilets, so why not make it 40, I guess. Portables are not a solution to overcrowding. They are a symptom to it, and studies have shown that they lower academic achievement and are prone to mold and are not well ventilated. They become furnaces or ice boxes dependent on the weather. No one is more aware than I am that the TDSB was ready to let it go that bad. They had no qualms covering our yard in portables and allowing the school and the staff and students within it to suffer. The only reason why this change is happening is because I was at that meeting and I raised the alarm to our community and we advocated strongly for our kids to get action. Now we're here and they're proposing a boundary change to supposedly address this, but it's not much better than where we were. Children currently attending Wedgwood will, and our dedicated staff and teachers will still feel the impact of severe overcrowding with this boundary change. Our school will still range from 120 to 140% capacity for the majority of our children's foundational educational years. This is not acceptable to us in any scenario, but especially when other elementary schools in our area are so underutilized. We have West Glen at 75% capacity, Broadacres at 80, Eatonville Junior School at 77%, Millwood at 86. Why should we accept our boundary being so large and our school being so full when there is clearly space at other schools to accommodate these students elsewhere? Not only does this impact our school with overcrowding, but the underutilized schools, their education is being impacted as well. I had a friend with children at West Glen in a grade 2-3 split that only had 2 grade 3 students in that split. So we can't pretend that those kids are getting the dedicated grade 3 curriculum focus they need to excel, because there's just so few of them in a class of mostly grade 2s. And this boundary change will also leave Bloor Lee overcrowded in 6 to 7 years, just in time for our kids to get there for their middle school education. So myself and other parents are worried that our kids will spend numerous years of their education in portables. It all feels like too little too late, and I hope there is more that can be done for Wedgwood. I'm also very upset that their proposed boundary change does not include honoring the legacy policy. So I would like the boundary change to be more substantial and honor that policy, even if that means it doesn't go into effect until 2025 or 2026, or approve this boundary change and then look elsewhere on the boundary, propose like maybe along Dundas, and send some more kids to Eatonville Junior School. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea Thompson. And you came in just before the 5-minute mark, so thank you for keeping to the time. I'm just looking to around the room. I'm not seeing any questions here. Are there any online? No. Thank you very much for coming today. We don't have any questions of clarification, but we do appreciate your feedback. Next up, we're moving to item number 7.5, ventilation-related investments, challenges and opportunities on capital projects, and opportunities to reduce respiratory viruses. So coming up next, we have 5 delegations on this topic, and the first up is Colin Furness, who's a TDSB parent and epidemiologist. Welcome. Thank you for coming today. Please have a seat. The one thing I did forget to mention today is that we've instituted a bell chime. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but at the 1-minute mark, instead of getting an interruption from the chair, you'll just hear a chime to let you know that you have 1 minute left. So with that, I will pass the microphone over to you, and you have 5 minutes, and then there may be questions of clarification. So please go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the honor of being able to address this group today. I am, as you mentioned, a parent, an epidemiologist. I'm also a professor of information. I've been a COVID advocate for a number of years now, since the beginning, really. It happens to sit really right in my wheelhouse. Last year, I was qualified by the Ontario Superior Court of Justice as expert in disease transmission and information behavior and knowledge use. How individuals and organizations use knowledge to try and stay safe is just about as central to what I do as it can get. I read the report. I'd like to commend the TDSB for a focus on CO2. It does, as the report note, go beyond what's required, beyond the minimum, beyond the law. This is vital, this is necessary, and I'm thrilled by it. The report does reiterate much of what's on the TDSB website. Where I'm concerned is that I feel that the report is not yet complete. The report does say, in terms of its mandate, that it will talk about ventilation investments and challenges, which it does. It also says that it will comment on other opportunities related to reducing respiratory viruses in schools. This is the content I find missing, and the recommendation to accept the report perhaps could be amended to turn it back so that the report could be completed. On a side note, I would prefer it say airborne viruses in schools. Neither measles nor COVID are respiratory viruses, but they're airborne, and this is why we worry about CO2. That's minor. In terms of what's missing, the vital role of school vaccination programs, and I know it's fraught, I know it's complicated, and in 5 minutes we can't talk about the details, but if a report is going to talk about opportunities to reduce transmission of airborne or respiratory viruses in schools, it's got to comment on what could be done, why things haven't been done to put vaccination back in schools. That's what we had when I was a kid. It worked well. Mask availability on demand. Maybe this is happening, maybe it isn't. The problem is the report makes no mention. The value of ultraviolet light and disinfecting air, this is very important. I'd like to point out that it was in the 1940s that it was clearly demonstrated that UV light in schools eliminated measles outbreaks. This is before there was a measles vaccine. And measles at its worst does really, really, really gruesome things to our children. We've known this for 75 years. I want us to talk about ultraviolet light. The technology today is so much better than it was in the 1940s. It's expensive, yes. Maybe there's other ways around to deal with that. My point is, if these opportunities are not in the report, they can't get discussed. And if they can't get discussed, they can't be considered, let alone implemented. So this is content that I think really deserves to be in this report. If the TDSB needs to convene a panel of experts, I would volunteer. There's people smarter than me who would do that as well. There's no shortage of willingness in the community to provide that input. TDSB staff doesn't need to do this on their own, but I think it does need doing. Going back to what is in the report, the ubiquitous CO2 measurement in buildings is an excellent idea. I'd like to point out that it should be done also at the level of classrooms. We have a DIY, do-it-yourself era in public health, and we say that parents and kids and community members can make their own decisions. They need to know in a given classroom how safe or dangerous that is. This room is very safe. I've taken off my mask because I actually have the wherewithal to have a device to tell me that. I want that for classrooms. I think that's extraordinarily important. Reporting CO2 at the level of the classroom would allow us to correlate it with sick days by classroom. You already have that data. The report notes that we need more research into the relationship between what is a safe CO2 level and TDSB can actually be the research it needs. We can actually do this. We can actually measure CO2 in classrooms and absences in classrooms. We can create that. The TDSB is able to do that. And again, if you need help, there is no shortage of expertise in the community to help do that. I would submit that the TDSB is uniquely positioned to provide that data. The last two last points to make, which I can squeeze into this minute. I'm thrilled about HEPA filters in classrooms. I am terrified about the lack of HEPA filters in gymnasiums. There was an event that I went to that I found terrifying that I do not have time to get into today. It was a graduation. It was dangerous. More significantly, though, kids are eating lunch en masse in gyms every day. I know that's about supervision. I know that's about resourcing. I get it. I understand it. It undermines safe classrooms to have unsafe gymnasiums, and this is where kids are opening their mouths, eating, and shrieking. I used to when I was a kid, and I'm sure that hasn't changed. Finally, we need to educate principals and caretakers about why we need HEPA filters. This would stop the kinds of situations where they don't get turned on, they don't get plugged in, they don't get cleaned. I believe those people are right-minded. I think they lack some of the information they need to be competent. Thank you.
Right on time. Okay, I'm just looking around the room. I see Trustee Earhart has a question. Please go ahead.
Thanks very much for joining us today, and it's really, really helpful to hear your perspectives. I really appreciate it. There's a few things that stood out to me that I wanted to ask. I'll put them all out just because of the time. I wanted to ask if you could tell us a little bit more about UV. It's something I've heard about being used in the arts sectors to kind of keep concerts going and that kind of thing, but I know very little about it. I also wanted to get your perspectives on those like larger congregate settings like gymnasiums, cafeterias, what you've seen is working or what your perspectives were, and even what your perspective is as a parent on that. And then just in terms of principals and caretakers, what kind of education, what do you feel is needed there? And thanks very much.
The last two I can answer together, I think, but let's talk about UV first. UV comes in a wide range of, there's a wide spectrum of ultraviolet light, some of which is quite dangerous, that'll harm your eyesight and burn your skin. And on the far end, there's UV light that actually will kill microbes and not harm humans. That tends to be in more expensive UV. So there's different approaches. You can have UV that comes on that is cheap and effective, but you can't have people in the room. There's UV that comes on with people in the room that is absolutely fantastic. So there's a wide range there. This is not an area of expertise for me, so I think trying to comment beyond that in terms of what's affordable and feasible, I think we should get qualified people to do that, and I think that's my point, is that TDSB should be seeking that information, again, from people more knowledgeable than me. In terms of the large congregate setting or the large congregate situations in gyms and the education, I'll tell you very briefly, and I will keep it brief. Going to my older son's grade 8 graduation, in a gym with about 400 people. I attended the council meeting around planning for this, and I heard people say, let's do it outside. And I said, I think we can do it inside because, and I regret saying this, because we have HEPA filters and we can deploy them and we can do this safely. Everyone agreed that would be okay. So I reached out to the principal and I said, I did the arithmetic, and given the filters that you told me you have, you need to plug in 16. That's a lot. That's most of the filters in the school. It's a lot. It's a lot of extension cords. You do that and we'll be okay. And the principal said, well, I don't know about any of this. I'm going to leave it up to the caretaker. And the caretaker said, no, I read the box. We need 4. The principal didn't understand that expertise was needed to figure out how to match the need in the room with the devices. The caretaker felt they had all the knowledge they need. Neither one was being bad, lazy, or even incompetent. They were ignorant. They were underinformed. And I think it wouldn't take much to create just a little bit more than a fact sheet to explain how these devices work, why you need to why certain things need to be done, why you need to use them in proportionate to the size of the room and the number of people there, how they work, and how they're able to keep people safe. So I think that's the congregate piece, and it's also the education piece.
Thank you so much. So Trustee Earhart, your time is up. And those were fulsome answers. I'm not sure that we got to the last question. I can't remember. But if not, perhaps Trustee DeVitis, would you like to be added to the list?
If possible, if maybe you can expand on that last part so we can get a more fulsome answer.
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Which part? So the education part, the understanding part. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to make any accusations to that principal and that caretaker. I really don't think that's the right way to analyze this. It requires a certain, I think, understanding about what these devices can do and what they can't do. HEPA filters are not ventilation, for example. They will scrub air, and they'll do it proportionate to their size and their capacity. It then depends on how many people are in the room and whether windows are open, and yes, the CO2 readings. Right? So the higher the CO2 readings, the more we need to have these filters in place. I doubt that caretakers or principals know classroom to classroom what the individual needs are. What we do know is even in a new school with excellent ventilation systems, the classrooms are not all equal. Any HVAC engineer will tell you that. They're not equal. So part of the education and understanding is really learning where the weak points are. If we were talking about body armor, you'd have a sense of what in your body needs protecting. If we think about schools that way or classrooms that way, we need to understand that some of those spaces are far more vulnerable than others. And obviously, gymnasiums, those really big spots, they're the ones I worry about the most. And principals and caretakers don't seem to know what to ask for.
And how difficult is that type of training for our staff to figure out, do you think?
I don't have experience trying to teach at scale, at that kind of scale. I am a teacher. I understand how to teach and how to explain. I think we probably need a conversation around what's effective as a fact sheet and what's effective as a Zoom seminar, maybe a little focus group, maybe, and if I can volunteer my time, I'd be happy to do that, to move that forward. I think we need people who understand the system better than I do to answer that. But I guess what I would say is we're not talking about a giant education program. We're talking about being able to answer the question, why? Why are these HEPA filters here? Why do kids make each other sick? How does that work? I've been able to explain it to my kids, so I don't think the curriculum is hard. How long that would take and what the best medium is, I think it's not something I spent thinking about on my way here, and I want to be careful. I'm not answering beyond what I've thought about. I think it's feasible. I don't think it's large.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee DeVitis. Next up, we have Trustee McLean. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm interested in exploring your observation regarding the gym and understanding that I understood the graduation you talked about and the 400 people in the gym and how that would present a challenge and whatnot. Is there a challenge based on the activities that, being a gymnasium and children exerting themselves to a higher level over a space and being in certain closer proximity quite often? Does this create, in your estimation, in your professional opinion, a challenge that is not factored into the, maybe the fundamental use parameters as HEPA filters are? They'll come with a guide and they'll tell you square footage and.
Yeah, that's actually, it's a good question, and the answer is a little bit complicated. Really, it's more dangerous to sit next to someone in close proximity like we did at the graduation ceremony for an hour and a half than it is to be running around in a class of, say, 25 huffing and puffing. So proximity matters a lot. To be clear, and I'm famous for being blunt in my media commentary, there was transmission, I'm told, at that graduation ceremony. At the time, given COVID levels, it's unimaginable that there wouldn't be. I'm told anecdotally there was. When you have transmission, you've got downstream effects, and eventually someone's grandparent dies. We had a graduation ceremony that I'm pretty sure killed someone downstream. That's fundamentally upsetting to me, and that is unnecessary, and it's not the way obviously things used to be. That's from people sitting close by for a long period of time. I'm more worried about that than I am worrying about a gym class where kids are huffing and puffing, unless they're huffing and puffing right in each other's faces a lot. And I don't know what a gym class looks like these days, but those gyms are big. A class of 25 in a big airspace, I'm not nearly as concerned as a bunch of people, including grandparents, including people who are very susceptible, just breathing in and out, but doing that within a foot of each other.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee McLean. Seeing no further questions, I would just like to thank you for your time today.
My
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize there was online. Trustee Rajakulasingam, please go ahead. Sorry, when I checked, you weren't on there yet.
I had entered it really last minute, so it's okay. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm learning a lot through how much you're sharing. Just a question of clarification. You said you used a device to check the quality, I think, of the air of the room that you're in right now before taking your mask off. Can you just repeat what you said and what you used and how we can use that in our classrooms? I didn't catch what you had said.
Absolutely. I don't think I supplied the detail. I think that's why. Nothing wrong with your hearing. This is a small device called an Aranet 4, A-R-A-N-E-T. They're not cheap. They're $200 and something. They measure carbon dioxide in the air in parts per million. And right now, the level in this room is 628. Under 800, I'm very happy to have my mask off as long as no one is very close by. As soon as someone comes within 6 feet, I put the mask back on. This is how I conduct my classes, and I'm privileged where I teach. The room air quality is similar, and so this to me tells me that it's okay, it's safe to take my mask off. We could put these devices in every room. There are people who know more about the available equipment than me, so I'm not suggesting that it should be necessarily this device, but this is a proof of concept, at the very least, that this kind of enablement, this kind of measurement, which for me is portable and goes all over the place, but could also be on the wall. There might be cheaper ways to do that, that this is doable, it's feasible.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm just going to double check. No further questions from trustees? No further questions. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. Thank you all very much for listening.
Okay, our next delegate, number 4, is Fareen Mahmood, who is a community member. Can you hear us?
Hi there, I can hear you. I'm just getting to a quiet spot right now. Thank you for letting me speak. Just let me know when I start because I know I have 5 minutes, so I want to make sure I maximize my time.
Please go ahead. Whenever you're ready and you start, we will start the clock, but not until we will not start the clock until you are ready.
Thank you. I will be ready in 1 second.
Take your time, don't worry.
So I'm ready. I'm just gathering my notes. So I'm here, of course, to respond to the report about ventilation, which I have looked through and I believe rests on a number of misleading assurances. I'm going to focus on the key ones. I've given material, but I will only highlight the ones that I have time to highlight. So misleading assurance number 1, there are 16,000 HEPA units in occupied spaces. This big number obscures the fact that no thought has been given to the equitable distribution of HEPA filters. Every classroom gets 1, and this is equal but not equitable. As air quality testing reveals, schools and every space within each school all have drastically varying ventilation needs. So factors such as ventilation type, ventilation age, the volume of the space, lots of stuff, all of these and the number of occupants at any given point in time have huge impacts on air quality. So in short, HEPA filter allocation must be determined by the air quality requirements of each individual space. Furthermore, engineer and ventilation expert David Elstrom conducted independent tests of the Austin HEPA brand used throughout the TDSB schools, and he found that the HEPA units weren't performing anywhere near the level claimed by the company. He concluded that the units were woefully undersized and noisy for a classroom, and that even a DIY HEPA filter costing about $120 would do a better job. His conclusions are alarming, especially at this point where we're in the dead of winter. Most classrooms rely exclusively on the HEPA units for any sort of air filtration. For the time being, though, the presence of those 16,000 HEPA units is a moot point. As a mother of 3, I've been to many assemblies and classrooms, and those units are almost always unplugged and out of sight. School staff, especially principals, do not seem to understand the role HEPA filters have to play in clearing the air. So the next misleading assurance in the report is that we do not need CO2 monitoring in individual spaces. The science on CO2 levels in an enclosed space is CO2 levels are high. We are breathing in air that has been exhaled by other occupants. So experts such as the Ontario Society for Professional Engineers, Harvard Public Health, they all tell us that CO2 monitoring is essential in the classroom, and it's an indicator of air quality safety. So it acts like a canary in a coal mine when there's a dangerous buildup of CO2, perhaps due to a blocked vent or too many kids in the class. The monitor will indicate that it's time for immediate action. And that's where people can open doors and windows, check vent obstructions, or move students into a different space. So this movement is growing. Schools in Denver, Boston, France, Belgium are doing this. So is Quebec. And New York City is considering this for its schools. You will also notice if you go downtown that a number of office buildings now feature the WELL certified placard. WELL is a healthy building certification program. So to be certified by WELL, a building must install a CO2 sensor in every room. The sensor must be visible to people and easy to read, our Minister of Education's office is located in a well-certified building, okay? Misleading assurance number 3 is that the TDSB is following expert guidance. So this report uses misleading language to suggest TDSB strategies are in line with expert guidance. It is not. So let's quickly go in the material I have given. I can't see you, so there's a series of tables and they focus on topic by topic. So let's quickly look at air changes per hour. The report says TDSB supports 3 to 6 where possible air changes per hour. Experts say a minimum of 6. ASHRAE actually recommends a lot more for infectious disease control. The reality is there's no measuring going on, so you can't really say what you're supporting where possible. TDSB classrooms are served by old mechanical systems. I can share calculations, but most spaces are likely getting a lot less than 3 air changes per hour. And when you have a classroom without HVAC and a HEPA turned off, it's 0. MERV filter grade. The report says TDSB is using the highest MERV filter possible. The reality is experts are saying MERV 13. Reality is vast majority of schools are using MERV 8. Very few are MERV 13. Only new projects will have MERV 13. HVAC system operations. Report says HVAC systems and windows are bringing in more fresh air. Experts are saying check your HVAC, use qualified people, and measure the air supply. The reality, nobody's measuring the air supply. We're having caretakers do this. They're great. Caretakers are great at doing many things, but they are not HVAC professionals. And they do not have the expertise to measure a system's air delivery rate. That means that you don't know what you're working with. You have no baseline. Transparency in education, this is a big problem. The report says we have reports and a ventilation webpage.
Ms. Mahmood,
experts are saying...
Ms. Mahmood, I'd just like to let you know that your time has ended.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess then people can just continue with the material I've given. This is just highlights from the material I've provided. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, I'm just looking around the room. We do have a question. Please go ahead, Trustee Earhart.
Hi, Farine. Thanks so much for taking the time to come today, and thanks very much for your ongoing advocacy on behalf of students, not just in the area of clean air, but beyond. So thank you. I just want to ask, you presented a lot to us, so it's a lot to take in. I'm wondering if you feel there's one change that the based on your expertise, if there's one change that the TDSB could make. You mentioned a lot about things that are in the area of the province as well, but if there's one thing that you feel the TDSB could make as a change, what would you like that to be? And thanks very much.
That's a really good question. I would say the most realistic and concrete change that is within the TDSB's control is educate staff and expand the mandate of the Environmental Sustainability Committee to include air quality and then develop policies that staff have to follow. People are not doing things because A, they just don't understand what air quality means. They don't understand its repercussions on their health. And they certainly aren't about to even turn the HEPA filter on or open the windows. This is not happening. So we need air quality policies in place and educate staff as part of those policies.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that and all the work you do. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, and up next we have Trustee Rajikulasingham. Please go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. Thanks so much for coming in. I was waiting for you to touch upon our website that kind of talks about ventilation in each of our schools, and then your time had wrapped up. So I was wondering if you can just clarify what your thoughts around, the TDSB kind of updating ventilation according to each school, and what your thoughts were around that.
So if you're asking me about the website and the reports, they're actually, I understand the TDSB's hands are tied, but those reports and that information is meaningless. I have pulled a series of Freedom of Information requests. I know that the reports were designed by the Ministry of Education. They're not reports, they're strange checklists that are just designed to placate the public. So, you know, what difference does it make if you know that you have 20 HEPA filters in your school? Like, it's not about how many HEPA filters you have, how many millions of dollars you spent on them. The main question is, what is your air quality like, and what are you using to mitigate it in that particular space? So for example, my daughter's classroom is of greatest interest to me. And, you know, I have 3, so let's just take one of them. I want to know what the CO2 level in her classroom is. I want to know kind of how much air is being delivered to her classroom. And I want to know whether she has a HEPA filter that is kind of meeting the overall air quality requirements of the space. The report doesn't, or the ventilation information doesn't give you any of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, that has ended the questions from trustees for today. Thank you very much, Ms. Mahmood, for coming in, well, for joining us today, I should say, and for sharing your perspective and experience with us. Up next, we have, no problem. Thank you. Up next, we have Natalie Aswad, who's also a TDSB parent. Natalie, can you hear us? Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of us on the schedule. My apologies. We have Sam Kaufman, who's a community member. Welcome, Sam.
Hello. Thank you.
So you
Can
have
you hear
5
me?
minutes. The clock will start whenever you're ready to begin.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can. It's a little quiet, so if you can try to speak into the microphone or the receiver you're using, it might
I'll try
help.
to speak up. Okay, thanks. I'm a parent too of a kid in 5th grade. So thanks for the chance to speak today. I've also submitted a written longer version of these comments with some references. This will be a little repetitive, actually, but I'm going to speak anyway, just so you hear the more people who have similar concerns. The staff report I found very broad.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yeah?
can you try to speak up a little louder? It's quite faint in the boardroom, unfortunately, so we want to make sure we can really hear what you're telling us.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Much better, thank you. Feel free to start from the beginning if you wish.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to say I'm a parent too of a child in 5th grade at a TDSB school, and it's going to be a little repetitive of what you've heard from other people today, but you know, I think it's valuable to hear that there are many people out there who have similar feelings. So I found the staff report very broad and a little dismissive of the main ventilation problems related to airborne illness. You know, the staff spends a lot of time talking about the challenges, and, you know, everybody agrees that there's significant challenges retrofitting all spaces in a board as large, complex, and frankly underfunded as the TDSB. But the problem is that the measures taken so far seem to be a hodgepodge implemented with no idea at all whether they're achieving appropriate targets. So my main messages to the board are, first, that appropriate targets need to be set. Second, that measurement needs to be used to ensure that targets are being reached, and if not, to determine appropriate mitigations. And third, that the strategy has to be both flexible and specific enough to accommodate the wide range of spaces operated by the TDSB. So, you know, first, the report sets the targets of 3 to 6 air changes per hour. That's too broad a range. Air changes per hour is not really the right metric. You really want to talk about airflow per person, because people are the source of the contaminant, right, of the viral illness. So the threat scales with the number of people, and airflow has to scale with the number of people too. Second, the board's report suggests that there's currently no need for the higher standards in ASHRAE 241, which was recently released. Well, let's just remember, we've just had the biggest COVID wave since the first Omicron peak, you know, higher in many places, depending on what monitoring you look at. In recent months, the WHO has taken to warning that it's not appropriate to let our guard down, and we should maintain protective measures. Their lead, Maria Van Kerkhove, recently posted on Twitter X, and I quote, "COVID-19 is still a global threat and we can't wish it away. What to do? Limit your exposure as much as you can. Test, mask, ventilate. get boosted and vaccinated. Public health agencies across the world this season have been sharing the ventilation message. The reality is we're not going back to a pre-pandemic world anytime soon. New pandemics are all too likely. We've had 2 years now of no precautions, basically, and very, very high constant circulation of COVID. More concretely, schools all over the world, including Ontario and the TDSB, if you look, have levels of student and staff absences due to illness that are way, way, way above 2018, 2019 levels. And these absences happen all year round. So the problem shows no signs of going away. So we need to do better right now and for the future. So what do? The easiest way, as you've heard, in practice to measure ventilation is to measure CO2 levels in every single space. Why do we need it? Exactly because of the mixed complex state of the TDSB schools. No two schools are alike. There's great differences between spaces. We have classrooms, we have portables, washrooms, offices, gyms, libraries, lunchrooms, old wings, new wings, etc. And some of these spaces get used very differently at different times, as you heard from the first speaker, Dr. Furness. Please, please, please don't forget school buses, okay? School buses are the worst in terms of risk. There's no ventilation. There's tons of people cramped into very small spaces, okay? Now, CO2 monitors used centrally, not the best. Using them in each individual space will give people cues to ensure, one, that the ventilation is functioning correctly. 2, windows or doors might need opening. 3, filters might need turning on and off if needed. So if we expect room occupants to take ad hoc action to improve air quality, as the report seems to suggest, a CO2 monitor in the room is a simple, visible signal for when it's a good idea to do that. I want to reiterate the concerns of the last speaker about the Austin Air units that the board is using. They're some of the worst units on the market. They've been tested to perform badly. They're very noisy, which means that it makes them basically unusable on high speeds. There are many options that are more effective, quieter, and cheaper. For HEPA units, Smart Air is a good brand that makes some of the best HEPA units. But Corsi Rosenthal boxes, which you might have heard of because I presented to the board on them in the past, they're very cheap and they're very effective. These are just box fans with furnace filters attached, and there are some commercial versions of these that are beginning to be made, including ones using PC fans that can be much more effective. So, it's 4 years into a pandemic. Let's get it right. Let's give people tools they need: in-room CO2 monitoring, appropriate filtration that's appropriate for the space, and quiet. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I'm just looking around the room online. I'm not seeing any questions for you, but thank you very much for your time and for speaking with us today. Okay, moving on. Up next, we have delegate number 6. This is Natalie Aswad, TDSB parent. Welcome, Natalie. Can you hear us?
Oh, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome. So the way this works is you'll have 5 minutes to speak on your topic. And then when you have 1 minute left, you'll hear a bell chime. That's just to give you a heads up that your time is coming to an end. And once you're done, please hang on the line in case we have questions of clarification from trustees.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm Natalie. I'm a parent of 2 children at the TDSB in elementary school. And my family is very COVID aware, and we do everything that we can do to avoid getting sick and getting others sick, including wearing masks in indoor spaces, high quality KN95 respirators. We're up to date on all of our vaccines and we get boosted regularly. And my kids don't eat indoors. For the last 2 years of in-person school, they have eaten lunch outside every single day. And despite this level of personal accountability, my older son, 10 years old, contracted COVID at school this year from a classmate who had COVID and who came to school after their infection and didn't wear a mask. And my son, who is otherwise healthy and has no health conditions, experienced a mild illness because he had been recently boosted with his XBB vaccine. but unfortunately suffered a horrific post-viral reaction in the form of head-to-toe hives and severe stomach pain that escalated over the course of a week, had us see multiple doctors, and eventually landed us in the emergency room. Unfortunately, he suffered with the effects of that rash and the stomach pain for almost 8 weeks, and it was really horrible for him and for our family. Especially for him, a child who had done everything at the personal level, at the level of individual accountability, everything asked of him to protect himself, and he was not kept safe in his school, the place where he has to go to learn. And it's extremely disappointing. And so in reading the report that was put out on Thursday with the opportunities to improve, I have to say that I am disappointed. And I'll start with the respiratory illness section, and I'll just say, frankly, I didn't see any opportunities for improvement noted there, which is distressing. And so I'd like to call on the TDSB today to acknowledge their responsibility to provide a safe learning environment for students by doing the following. Number one is to communicate clearly the Toronto Public Health's recommendation to mask for 10 days following any illness. This is an expectation of both Toronto Public Health and also the Government of Ontario for any illness. And this communication needs to be very clear to parents and at the top of all the communications regarding health, not buried in the body of the email. Similarly, this needs to be discussed within the schools, and the behavior of masking after illness needs to be normalized. It's something that we can do that's important and demonstrates caring for our community. In parallel with that, I'm calling on the TDSB to do more to support the expectation of masking after illness. For example, when children are marked absent due to illness, they should be offered a mask when they come back to school. We can't make anyone wear a mask, but you can make it easier for them to do so. And that includes things like offering them masks and making sure the masks are available in the classroom, not down in the office. We need to reduce barriers to making this behavior normal. And finally, I also call on the TDSB to communicate to parents when there is a known case of COVID in the classroom. I understand this isn't a requirement anymore, but COVID still is considered a communicable disease of public health significance, and it can cause potential illness, severe illness, death, and negative long-term outcomes. And parents should know when it's in the classroom. I'd like to share that when my son had COVID, I received 2 life notices that week, one from each of my son's classrooms, and I heard nothing about COVID. Regarding the ventilation opportunities in the report, I'd also say that the information here is disheartening. I think that TDSB should be striving to meet the ASHRAE standard for infection risk management, as we are in an ongoing pandemic. Just because the emergency phase is over doesn't mean the pandemic itself is over. And while I understand that the TDSB doesn't have the funds or the time to make wholesale changes to the HVAC systems across the board, there's no other reason that other incremental measures can't be committed to. As other delegates have said already, CO2 monitoring is very possible in classrooms right now via standalone monitors. It's not the same as an automated system that's going to turn on and off the HVAC based on the CO2, but at least it would give the TDSB data that you could collect and then go back to the Ministry of Education for funding to make more improvements in the classroom. And in the interim, the data from those standalone monitors in the classroom would provide decision support for the teachers to make decisions like, hey, open a window, turn up the HEPA filter, or take the kids outside. The solutions here do not have to be all or nothing. We can work with what we have to make things better for our kids right now. So in summary, I just want to say I'd like the TDSB to communicate to enforcing and implementing the Toronto Public Health expectations around masking, and yes, to take incremental steps regarding CO2 monitoring to improve the air quality in our kids' exposures to potential airborne illnesses within the classrooms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie. That was right on time. I'm just going to look around the room and check online. Again, I'm not seeing any questions of clarification. So thank you very much for sharing your opportunities, and appreciate you coming today and sharing your story and your advice for us today. Up next, we have delegation number 7, and this is the last delegation on this topic in particular for the evening. Welcome Heather Pun, who's also a TDSB parent. Welcome Heather. You will have 5 minutes. And there will be a bell chime at the 1 minute mark. And then trustees will have the opportunity to ask questions of clarification if they have any. Can you hear me okay?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi, Heather.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. Welcome back. You have 5 minutes. I'm not sure if you heard my little spiel before.
I did, yes.
Okay, wonderful. So feel free to get started whenever you're ready.
Okay, super. Thanks so much. I've been trying to engage the board to improve the ventilation in my child's portable. A CO2 monitor goes to school with him each day, and I see how bad the air quality is. Some days it gets higher than 3,000 ppm. ASHRAE suggests CO2 levels should be below 1,000 ppm. The union has a grievance procedure when levels are above that. But for students, all they have are parents desperately trying to make their classrooms safe. Numerous emails and meetings have tried to fix the issues with no resolution, only that the board uses the WHO standards of 3,000 parts per million levels in classrooms for 8 hours. I'm awaiting the documentation on that. Clean air isn't a luxury, it's a fundamental right. I guess the question is now what? You've written to the ministry and received a dismal reply, written a report with no real deliverables or timelines, all while the pandemic marches along, continually getting staff and students sick and disabled. COVID is not just a flu, but a multi-system disease that is known to cause heart attacks, strokes, and affect many parts of our bodies. StatsCan estimates that 1 in 9 adults have experienced long COVID, the risk of which increases with each infection. Education workers are the top 3 industries of those reporting long-term symptoms. The report quotes the ASHRAE document on indoor CO2 that requirements for CO2 concentrations to limit infectious disease transmission are highly uncertain and that ventilation is only one control strategy that should be implemented as part of a layered approach to risk management. But the very next line in that document says, all else being equal, higher CO2 concentrations correspond to lower outdoor air ventilation rates and the potential for an increased risk of airborne transmission. It goes on to talk about using CO2 as an indicator of the rebreathed fraction of indoor air. At 3,000 ppm, the rebreathed fraction is almost 7%, meaning 1 in 15 breaths of air has been in someone else's lungs first, possibly with a respiratory virus. And we wonder why we cannot stop the revolving door of sickness in our schools. But let's look at the layered approach to risk management that the TDSB has enacted. In the section of other opportunities related to reducing respiratory viruses in schools, it states that TDSB continues to seek advice and direction from TPH and the Ministry of Education. TPH currently states, masking continues to be an important layer of protection to keep you, your loved ones, and the most vulnerable in our community safe. Wearing a mask, in addition to other public health measures, can reduce the spread of these viruses and is an important measure we can use to protect ourselves and one another. Yet every day when I pick up my child for lunch, I see unmasked staff and students. My child is the only one regularly masking in the entire school. In December, I was alerted to an outbreak at our school, not through a TPH notice, but from seeing half the staff suddenly in surgical masks. Ironically, the next day I received a notice from TPH about lice in my child's classroom. COVID is a level 3 pathogen that requires full PPE when handled in a lab. In TDSB schools, it's deemed less dangerous than lice. TPH also states to stay home if you're sick or have symptoms of illness, even if they are mild, and wear a mask for 10 days after the start of symptoms. Staying home sick is not what is happening in schools, nor is 10 days of masking. Very sick kids are sent into school every day. Asymptomatic spread is as high as 60%. Estimates right now are that 1 in 12 Ontarians have COVID. That is like 2 in every class. Why is the board not following public health guidance? The report continues with other actions that are being used to reduce respiratory viruses in school. Respiratory viruses are airborne, and there's almost no evidence that COVID is transmitted via surfaces. This means for COVID that hand sanitizer and wipes don't stop the spread when it hangs in the air. And baggy surgical or cloth masks that the province provides don't work, but well-fitted respirators do. The HEPAs that the board purchased are drastically underpowered. The Clean Air Delivery Rate, or CADR, is a rate at which the HEPA filter cleans the air. The HEPA is on the lowest setting and the only one manageable from a noise standpoint, if they're even turned on, are rated at 32 cubic feet per minute. It would take this unit 3.25 hours to make 1 air change in a portable. 6 air changes per hour is a suggested minimum level, including other sources of ventilation.
A CR box made with computer fans is rated at 147 CAD-R, almost 5 times the cleaning power for less money, less filter costs, and less energy required. But parents have been denied the opportunity to provide these boxes. I donate Kleenex, glue sticks, and Lowry books, but I am restricted from donating something proven to keep the entire class safer and protect their families and communities. Why are we blocked from using these? I am completely perplexed why alternative forms of filtration were not discussed at all in the report. There is no mention of additional hazards or the use of cost-effective CR boxes. Parents have been contacting the board about these solutions for over 2 years. Recent news articles talk about a lack of substitute teachers, but mitigation for airborne diseases is not mentioned. Basic CR boxes can be made for about $100, less than the cost of the supply for a half a day of school. 2-ply boxes with computer fans cost the equivalent of supply for a full day of school. Less illness means less short and long-term disability for staff and more consistency in classrooms. Better air equates to better test scores, behavior, and health. We need to be using the tools we have at hand now. If the board has a commitment to support the well-being of all staff and students, then you'll be doing all you can to make schools as safe as possible. So much knowledge about mitigating airborne diseases has been learned over the past 4 years. We just need the will to use it.
Heather?
Thank you.
Oh.
Yes?
You're past your time.
Yes, I'm done. I'm done.
Oh, you're done. Okay. Thank you. We do have a question of clarification from Trustee Hastings first off. So please go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. I wanted you to let her continue. She was delivering information that wasn't going to make sense unless we heard from the beginning and the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Hastings. I'm not seeing any other speakers on the list. Heather, thank you for taking the time today to provide us with your experience and your perspective and your thoughts on how we might move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we are moving to item number 7.6. This is the status of childcare centers in the TDSB. And we have a familiar voice on the phone. We have John Weatherup from the Toronto Education Workers Local 4400. John, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Oh, we can.
Yeah,
We can hear you. So you know the drill. The only thing that may have changed since you were last here is the chime that you'll hear at the 1 minute mark.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to thank all the speakers, and we're very supportive of the speakers previously, as well as I know Jason Ramsey has put in a report on the ventilation system. So just going to the status of childcare services report in the TDSB, while I think it's a well-meaning report, it's a bit disingenuous in the sense that when you read the strategic direction, it said build strong relationships and partnerships within school communities to support student learning and well-being, create a culture for student and staff well-being, and provide equity of access of learning opportunities for all students. So just to put it in perspective, for those who do not know, we represent probably the largest deliverers of early childhood education, early childhood development. We represent the 1,200 DECEs that deliver the all-day kindergarten program for early learning, the extended day program and the summer programs. We represent the DECEs, or early childhood educator story and parenting workers early on programs in 75 schools across the system site. We represent 4 childcares. 3 are located in the Toronto District School Board. 1's located at the at the child space in the Catholic Board. We represent the DECs at Bloorview. You know, Bloorview is a school authority with some of our most vulnerable children, JIAS and LINK programs. So as 4400, we have not been involved in the building of strong relationships and partnerships within school communities. This report is dealing with one aspect of it, and I think the silos that we deal with it in are inappropriate. So that as we talk about this report, we have a whole host of issues facing early childhood education. When you go through the report, and I first off want to recognize that the province and the federal government has not been fully participating in this process, and has really put the TDSB in a difficult place, as well as all school boards across this province. But when you talk about spaces in schools and refer to it in numbers and bricks and mortar. What we're talking about students, and I'll get to parents in a second, who have been denied access to early childhood education, which is the most detrimental to people who are vulnerable. The Pascal report, there's lots of research on it. We're talking thousands of children being denied access to actually quality early childhood education from a very little early age to the 6-year-old till they're actually into the school system. But it's completely a different process for early childhood education, and the impact can be measured across the system on the impact on children as they move through the system. While we can't track individual students, we all know what the harm that's done, in particular, to people from vulnerable and marginalized communities. So when I look through this report and we talk about, and some of these numbers are dated, some of these numbers are not that helpful because I think they need to be updated, including the cost of replacements, where the government is underfunding. I think that this needs to be integrated with all the partners in here. So as I said, when I go back to the strategic direction, I don't believe that there's been a effort to work together collectively with all the groups, and we volunteered to do that. We volunteered when I spoke on the extended day program. We volunteered when we looked at all-day kindergarten, but there has been no kind of reach out on a strategic level to deal with these issues. It's only been dealt with in on a one-off or a silo basis, which I think is inappropriate. So I think the strategic direction needs to be reviewed. And as all our, as particularly our members, and the second part of it is I referred to students and spaces. One of the biggest issues facing both the board and parents is the issue of affordability, and denying these spaces or early childhood spaces has also impacted both employees in the access to the what we call the $10 a day program, as well as parents not having access to that, which even puts greater pressure on parents, employees, and children. So I think as a recommendation, we'd recommend that you partner with a number of different groups that you'll hear from, some probably even tonight, that we work together on bringing a collective answer to this question, as well as a strategic plan and strategic way forward on challenging the province to provide the proper funding to ensure that all 28 of these childcare centers open, that the federal government open up its funding, but that we change how we deal with this, from dealing with it from bricks and mortar back to what we do every day is worrying about children, worrying about staff, and worrying about students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherup. Just looking at the online and the room, I'm not seeing any questions of clarification, but we thank you for sharing your perspective with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Janet Davis from Toronto Childcare Advocates.
Hello.
Hi, Janet. So I believe So I believe you know the drill. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. At the 1 minute mark, you'll hear a bell that will give you the heads up that your time is coming towards an end. And then at the end of that, just hold on in case there are any questions of clarification from trustees.
Great. Thank you very much. I wanted to make sure that you had received the written submission that we had sent in. And I'm speaking on behalf of a group of organizations that have been working together to try and advance the development and expansion of childcare and early learning in the City of Toronto. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today, and I want to comment first of all that I think this is a comprehensive and well-written report, and it outlines the challenges that the TDSB is facing with respect to capital funding. And it also demonstrates the degree to which the school boards and the TDSB in particular is a very important and key partner, in fact, has a prescribed role in providing childcare and early learning for families in Toronto. And the Toronto boards have always been leaders, going back almost 40 years. And the model of having childcare in schools to provide seamless transition between childcare and schools, and the schools first policy has been always a model for provincial policy. You'll see in the submission that the 28 childcare centres were going to provide over 2,000 spaces, 2,035 spaces. They have all been approved by the ministry. Not all of them, the last 11 did not get the final approval from the ministry, but they would, if built, provide much needed childcare in underserved areas in the city, and I'm sure you can see that from the map. Right now, there is no other capital money for childcare. The funding has come to the school boards. The city has a 10-year capital plan, and they're using reserves, city debt, development charges, and other things to build that capital budget. But they have not received any capital money whatsoever. And if you look at the capital budget for 2024 at the City Children's Services Division, you'll see big zeros from the provincial and federal governments. But ironically, the province and the federal government have signed agreements that compel our municipalities or our service system managers to meet targets. And in Toronto, we have 11,200 essentially new spaces that are supposed to be being created in Toronto, with 4,500 of them in schools. But unlike other provinces, Ontario has provided no capital money other than this money that school boards are receiving to expand childcare. Now, this money goes back to 2017, and we know there have been delays. Many of them justified. We understand why there have been delays. And I understand as well, we do, that you are in discussions with the province about whether or not they will provide additional funding to support all 28 childcare centres. And there is a funding gap we estimate at about $15 million, based on reports that we have seen in the media. One of the things that we are asking is for the school board to build all of the 28 childcare centres, or commit to building them. To continue, we have a set of recommendations at the end of our submission. We know that schools are where parents want childcare to be. We know schools are the hub of the community. We know that childcare centres in schools are the right place to be. So we call on you to continue to negotiate with the provincial, with the Ministry of Education, the provincial government, to make sure those 28 projects can get built. We know there's discussion about reallocating the funds, and what we would like to suggest is that if that happens, if that is allowed, that you go ahead and build the highest priority centers immediately, and that you commit to those 11 childcare centers, or however many that will be unfunded, because we don't know what the discussions are going to result in, that there is a plan and a commitment to build them with funding from other partners over time, and that you call on the federal government to release the funding they announced 2 budgets ago that would provide some capital funding and could help resolve this situation. And we want to work with you, along with the city, all other agencies that believe childcare is important in the City of Toronto, and we can make the Canada-wide early learning and childcare program a success.
Okay, thank you, Janet. I see a question from, before we get to you, Trustee Earhart, we have online from, it was put in earlier. Trustee Arts, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Janet, for coming to speak to us, and thank you, as always, for your strong advocacy for childcare. I think it's been a little while since we talked, but I'm sure from the, from the report and our conversations that we really do we really do value the childcare. We want to build these projects. Could you talked about we in this context, and I think a big help here. We're really, we have a list of 17 projects plus another 11 that we just don't have approval to proceed with. So in this context that you're speaking about, I'm wondering what kind of other advocacy and expertise we could leverage to get the province to move on this and give the city the money. I know the city doesn't have the money and the money's not coming from the province. And this is, yeah, go ahead.
So you'll probably see at the end of our written submission, the Toronto Coalition for Better Childcare, along with the Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare, the Association for Early Childhood Education, B2C2, which is a childcare development nonprofit, and QP 2484, which represents the childcare local that has the most organized childcare centers, plus QP 4400 are involved in advocacy to advance childcare and expand childcare in Toronto. We have been working with the city to review the recently announced allocation from the province. It came just before Christmas, the 2024 guidelines and funding allocations. There's still money that we don't know about, and that relates to salaries, because many childcare workers in the city, as you know, are underpaid, and the provincial program is not going to provide the kind of increases that will assist workers here in the city. Anyway, we are planning to meet with MPPs and MPs over the next few weeks, leading to both the provincial and the federal budgets. We know that it's the provincial and the federal government that hold the purse strings, but both the school board and the city have been left with meeting targets that they don't have the funding to pay for. Or they don't have the funding to meet the targets to build the number of spaces. 12,000 spaces is the target for Toronto. So it's ironic that we've been given once again targets and no means to achieve them. Many of us are very concerned that provinces like Ontario and others that were never keen on participating in the Canada-wide program with the federal government are hoping to see the public and nonprofit sector fail and allow the privatization of childcare. And we're very concerned about the growing for-profit childcare sector. And the minister's comments, who said that what is wrong with childcare in a strip mall across from a school. It's that kind of sense of what childcare should be is what is very concerning, because we believe these facilities should be publicly owned, they should be publicly funded, and they should be publicly accountable, and that schools are the place that parents trust. Oh yeah, I'm not looking
we're
at
over.
anyone,
Unfortunately,
so
we're over Trustee Arts' time limit. But there are other speakers who have questions to ask. So please. Hold
there
on.
you are now. Now I can.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to move on at this time. We have Trustee Earhart. Please go ahead, Trustee Earhart.
Thanks so much. And former Councillor Davis, just thanks so much for your ongoing advocacy for childcare and all you've done for children in this city. We appreciate you. This boggled my mind when you said this, so I just wanted to make sure I heard it correct, that with the space targets that were provided, your understanding is the only capital money, like the only money to build bricks and mortar childcare or retrofit public or private spaces for new spaces in the city of Toronto was provided to the TDSB and the TDSB only. Is that correct? And I just if you could speak to how could that be?
How could that be? I agree. When the announcements were made about the funding for the CWELC program, that's the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare, everyone was very happy because it's lowered fees. Fees are at 50% now and are going down to an average of $10 a day. That funding was 100% from the federal government. There was additional funding to increase salaries, though inadequate. It was also from the federal government. And the provincial government has done virtually nothing. The program, the CWELC program, did not come with capital money. And after there was significant pressure, the feds did announce 2 budgets ago, as part of the infrastructure program, that there was going to be $625 million for the country for childcare under something called the Child Care Infrastructure Fund. But none of the money has been approved and allocated, and Toronto does not know what it's going to get and when it's going to get it. There's some indication that our portion would create about 8 new childcare centers.
Okay, thank you. That's
based
helpful.
on some initial
I'm going to jump
estimates.
in with the time with just one more quick question. If you could speak very quickly to the benefits of having childcare either co-located or within schools. You made mention of it. I'd love if you could elaborate on that. And thanks so much.
We know that childcare in schools, it makes it easy for families, and it gives a sense of community, builds sense of community, makes young children comfortable to be in the school environment, allows professionals to talk to each other and provide seamless transitions between childcare and schools. Absolutely, we know that schools are the place that parents trust and that children thrive in.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up we have Trustee King. Please go ahead, Trustee King.
Thank you, through the chair, and thank you, Janet Davis, for coming in and speaking with us. I believe that I heard in your response to Trustee Arts a concern about private versus public operation, and I just wondered if you could just clarify and expand a little bit on what the concern is and what leads you to believe that it is a concern.
There is research over many years that has demonstrated that the quality in childcare is highest in publicly delivered and nonprofit childcare. The federal government is under the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program, giving priority to nonprofit childcare. The City of Toronto has always had a nonprofit policy since 2004. The intention was to build a public system of childcare, to grandparent the existing services, and to expand in the nonprofit sector and the public sector. So the federal government has conditions in the federal provincial agreement that all growth should reflect the existing proportion of commercial to nonprofit. And in Toronto, 90% of childcare is nonprofit, and so any expansion in that sector would be 90% in the nonprofit sector. The unfortunate part is that the nonprofit and public sector don't have access to capital, and we have seen large commercial chains growing, not just here, but in other other jurisdictions where capital money and operating money for the first time here is going to new for-profit childcare. So there is concern, like in long-term care, we will see growth in that sector when we know that what we want is to build the highest quality, publicly accountable, publicly funded childcare system for the future.
Thank you for that. And just a quick follow-up. Is part of your concern then that for this provincial government that nonprofit childcare is not a priority?
Yes, there's a great deal of concern that the provincial government, it's interesting, if you look at the contributions and the allocations that were announced just before Christmas, the provincial contributions have not gone up at all. The money that they are spending is federal money, essentially. And other provinces have had their provincial government step up and make contributions to ensure that this new national program is successful.
I'm so sorry. I think our time has ended, but I appreciate the responses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your expertise with us. this is certainly an issue I know everybody is concerned about. So with that, we are.
Could I just ask you, sorry.
One thing I
Chair-
did want to mention, Janet, and this may be what you're asking, we did send out your delegation to everybody. It's gone by email.
No, I wanted to commend you for the advocacy and the board for the advocacy on this issue. And I just wanted to close with that.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. I know everybody's working really hard here on that. So please know that your delegation has gone to everyone via email. It went earlier, as did all the written submissions today from all of our delegates, whether they were written or oral, or if they sent in both. Those have gone out to trustees, and we thank everybody who has given their time to us today to provide their expertise. We've had a lot of really good information from community members, experts, and also TDSB parents too. So with that, we're going to take a tight 10-minute break, as they say in Hollywood. We're going to make this a tight 10, and we will be back to continue this meeting. And then I will just remind everybody, we have a timed special meeting at 7 o'clock. So it's going to be a bit of a choppy evening, but please bear with us and we will get through the work. We are now in recess. Number 5, which is report from trustees appointed to the Ontario Public School Boards Association. Item number 5.1 is our OBSPA Director's Report, so I will turn it over to the trustees who represent OBSPA. And I would just ask first who would be speaking to this report.
Hi there, it's Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Please go ahead.
Everyone should have received the file that I just emailed. It's a hard copy, like an electronic copy of the report. So the preamble, I tend to do this as a habit, just to state what it is and who's on it. So OBSPA advocates for public education in Ontario, and I've listed on the report our trustees from TDSB who've been appointed. The next item is the reminders. The OBSPA 2024 Public Education Symposium that's being held this week, January 25th and January 26th at the Sheridan Centre in Toronto. And this year's symposium theme is Leadership Excellence, Strengthening Public Education Together. And I encourage all of our trustees, if you haven't already done so, please feel free to register and attend. There's a link in the PDF that I've sent. The next item is the labor update. Just to draw your attention so everyone's aware that on November 21st, OBSPA ratified the tentative agreement that was reached with the the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario Teachers and Occasional Teachers. That was ratified on November 21st. The next item is the OBSPA Policy Development Work Group. My fellow trustee may want to speak to this item. The OBSPA Policy Development Work Group met this past week and participated in a virtual consultation session regarding the board governance policy and regulatory matters. This included topics with regard to the Integrity Commissioner, Code of Conduct, Director of Education, qualifications, as well as professional development, which is an important piece, we feel, for our trustees, that we all be able to participate in that professional development. The next item is the OBSPA advocacy actions and activities. The OBSPA Advocacy Day was held at Queen's Park on November 27th, and more than 40 board of directors, board members, and designates attended. Nearly 45 meetings throughout the day with members of Parliament from across Ontario, representing all parties in the legislature. And the trustees that were able to participate this year were Trustee Arts, Trustee Dawson, Trustee Shan, and myself, Trustee Williams. The next item I want to highlight is the advocacy for National Food, School Food Program. So OBSPA wrote an advocacy letter today, a few days ago, requesting that $1 billion over 5 years, with a minimum of $200 million per year, be included in the budget, the federal budget for 2024, for a national school food program. OBSPA highlighted that there was no mention in last year's budget. The National School Food Program was initially introduced as part of the federal budget in 2019, and then reaffirmed in the 2022 federal budget with reference to mandate letters for the Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development, and the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. So OBSPA is encouraging board members to also send a letter directly to the Honorable Krista Friedland with regard to supporting OBSPA's letter, advocating for that national school food program, and There's also a link there in the report to the pre-budget consultations, the deadline for submissions being February 9th of this year. There's an update, just a brief update about the Indigenous Trustees Council. More information can be found on the OPSPA website, the Black Trustees Caucus update, the highlight of the submission that was made to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, consultation on anti-Black racism in education. It's a very comprehensive document. I would encourage everyone to have a read. A reminder of OPSPA professional development. Again, the symposium that's happening this week, January 25th and 26th, and a link to the page on the OPSPA website, which includes a link to register. There's a list there of the upcoming meeting dates, and ending off with relevant links to the OPSPA homepage, Trustee Professional Development Program, and OPSPA Good Governance Guide. And out, I through the chair, that's my report. Welcome my fellow trustees appointed to OPSPA to add anything that they wish. If I've not included something. And also there is a motion arising from this OPSPA report. And that's my report.
Okay, so thank you very much. Before we go to the business arising motion from this report, did any trustees on OPSPA wish to elaborate on anything else? I'm not sure if I saw a hand up earlier. Okay, I'm not hearing any and not seeing anything in the chat. So with that, I would just ask the OPSPA trustees who would be moving that motion. I know, I think it has been circulated.
The text of the motion has been circulated through the chair. I'd like to move that motion that was circulated and invite a seconder.
I'd be happy to second, Madam Chair. It's Shelley.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is now on the screen, and to the movers, would you like to speak additionally to this? I know Trustee Williams, you spoke generally to this, but is there anything you wish to add?
Just to add the importance of this national school food program. I think Canada is like one of the few countries that does not have such a national food program, and it really would benefit the learning outcomes of our students, their health, their well-being, and it's been a commitment of the federal government since 2019. And we're just advocating, asking for the chair to send a letter advocating for the follow through and realizing on this national school food program. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat or in the room, but I'd like to pass the chair because I do have a question about this.
Go ahead, Trustee Chenisler.
Thank you, Chair Shan. What is just in terms of the timing of this, I feel like there was a time crunch related to the Minister of Finance making some decisions. And my concern is just around the timing of this and our board meeting being January 31st. Are we okay to wait until then to make a board decision on this, or does it require fast tracking?
Madam Chair, I can answer. It's Trustee Laskin.
It's actually the vice chair who is chairing it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
It's fine.
I would be happy to note that the federal budget consultation does not end until February 9th. So I do believe, Mr. Chair, that we would have enough time if this goes through the regular process to our next board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Laskin. Is there a follow-up question, Trustee Chancellor?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, I'll pass the chair back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have Trustee Earhart.
I wanted to speak in support. I do believe we passed a general business arising motion around federal budget advocacy that included National School Food Program, but I think what this offers is to align with the specific asks that are taking place across OBSPA. So that was not specified in our last motion. So I think this would be particularly helpful because it offers that precision and specificity. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Earhart. So I'm not seeing any further questions. I think we can open the vote on this motion. And the vote is now open.
Trustee Shan in favor.
Turnus Lynn in favor.
Trustee Pei in favor.
Trustee Patel in favor.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Rajwani in favor.
Trustee Gills in favor.
Wong in favor.
Trustee Williams in favor.
Trustee Lee, Trustee Hastings. In favor. For Hastings. Trustee Lee, are you voting? Okay, we'll mark him as absent. Are we good? Okay, and that has carried. Thank you. And so we are now on item number 6.1, which is the Toronto Lands Corporation 2024-2025 annual operating and capital budgets. And I'd like to turn it over to Director Russell Rollins to introduce this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, we would welcome the CEO of the Toronto Lands Corporation, Ryan Glenn, to present this report.
Do we have Mr. Glenn in the meeting? Okay, we're just working on making sure Mr. Glenn is led into the meeting or is aware that we're at this item. Trustee Hastings, you have a question. Okay, I don't know, has staff been in touch with Mr. Glenn?
That's a very generous offer, or Associate Director Stacy Zucker could review the report for the board.
Perhaps Associate Director could, do we not want to have Mr. Glenn do this? We haven't been able to reach him. Okay. Why don't we move on to item number 7.1, if we have the appropriate staff in the Zoom room, and then we'll come back and we'll give Mr. Glenn a chance to catch up. Do we have Mr. Gowdy? Yes, I see him on the screen. Okay, so let's move on to item number 7, which is 7.1. This is the attendance boundary changes for Wedgwood Junior School and West Glen Junior School. And over to Associate Director, to Director Russell Rollins to introduce this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, as you correctly stated, 7.1 and 7.2 will be presented by System Officer Andrew Gowdy.
Thank you, Director. Good evening, trustees, staff, and members of the public. Through the chair. The purpose of the report before you is to recommend a solution to the accommodation pressures at Wedgwood Junior School. This is one of the studies that was approved for us to conduct this school year in the long-term program and accommodation strategy. I'd like to begin by thanking Superintendent Ali Jahangir for leading this study with the participation of principals Barbara Graydon, David Kassar, and Anna Patterson, and planning staff Dan Castaldo, David Pultzer, Giovanna DiGirolamo, and Nicole C. I'd also like to thank the parents for providing input and feedback. Wedgwood Junior School is located in central Etobicoke in Ward 2. Wedgwood is experiencing significant enrollment growth, largely due to the residential intensification occurring in the Etobicoke Centre area, which is one of the designated growth centers in the city's official plan. Wedgwood currently has 7 portables on site and is projected to continue growing and receive more portables unless a change is made. The school is experiencing many pressures because of the large size of the enrollment and the small size of the building. For example, the building lacks a sufficient number of purpose-built kindergarten rooms for the number of kindergarten students. The building also has a very small ancillary spaces, like the gym, which is inadequate for enrollment of this size to support phys ed, lunch, and gatherings. A local feasibility team involving the local trustee, superintendent, principals of Wedgwood Junior School, West Glen Junior School, and Bloorley Middle School, and central staff studied the area and is recommending that the boundaries be changed between Wedgwood and West Glen for September 2024. This will decrease the enrollment at Wedgwood by redirecting approximately 150 students to West Glen over time. The local feasibility team is recommending that this be phased in so that the students currently attending Wedgwood will be allowed to stay at the school until they graduate, and all new registrants will be directed to West Glen. This boundary change area is currently bused to Wedgwood because the addresses are further than 1.6 kilometers from the school. However, through this boundary change, the addresses will be assigned to a closer school, West Glen, which is located within 1.6 kilometers for many of the addresses. It is anticipated that busing will decrease over time as the boundary change is phased in. Appendix A of the report contains tables that show the impact on enrollment and utilization of the proposed boundary change on the schools. Appendix B contains a map that shows the current and proposed boundaries. A virtual public meeting was held to share the proposal and collect feedback. The meeting was attended by approximately 100 people. An online survey was available for people to complete. A majority of the responses received were in support of the boundary change. Further accommodation solutions will be required for this area. Staff will be submitting another report to board in the future on residential developments to redirect to schools outside of the area that have space. The long-term solution for the Etobicoke Centre is to build a new elementary school on the Silver Hill site. A business case for this new school was submitted to the ministry as part of the last round of capital priority projects. This concludes our presentation. We'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, we have a short speakers list at this point. First up, we have Trustee Laskin, who will be followed by Trustee McLean.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, to staff. We heard a very passionate deputation today about the possibility that staff was going to recommend over 20 portables be put to the site, and it was the parents that recommended the boundary change. I'm wondering if you could just give us a little history here about how it got to this point and understanding. I don't know the area well, so probably Trustee McLean should have spoken before me because it's his school. But I am interested in, there seemed to be an implication in the deputant that there were schools in the area that did have space. So I'm wondering through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Gowdy, if he can just give us a little more background. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you very much for the question, Trustee Laskin. The long-term solution for this part of the city is to build a new school. This is one of the 5 growth centers that's been identified. It's very similar to Midtown and Yonge and Sheppard and the Scarborough Town Center area. So it's going through massive residential intensification. So we are employing holding strategies while the development is occupied. And one of the holding strategies we will be using is portables. And so Wedgwood is the first school to be impacted by multiple portables. It's a large school site of 7 acres, and we were going to really put many portables onto that school site. Another solution we were going to implement was redirecting residential developments at the proper time to balance the portables across school sites. So Wedgwood was intended to have multiple portables, but there was going to be other school sites that were going to get portables too. But one of the things we have learned, but by listening to the community, to the parents, and to the principal and to the superintendent, is we have learned that Wedgwood is a facility that is really very small compared to the size of the acreage that's on. And this small facility is definitely under pressure by the number of students and the number of portables. So it's not about lack of land to put the portables on. It's really because this facility was designed in an era that had very small gyms and very small libraries. And so we've heard the concerns about how the school is operating, and we had discussions as part of the long-term program and accommodation strategy process with superintendent and trustee to define the range of solutions that we'd investigate, and that led to this process of the boundary change.
Thank you very much. And just one follow-up, Madam Chair, because I look forward to what Trustee McLean has to say. In terms of the priority, understanding that there are other schools in the area that can accommodate the growth, what is your sense in terms of the timing for the new school when it would be needed in terms of our TDSB priority list?
Thank you, through the chair. So we have submitted a business case for this new school. It's one of our top 5 priorities. This school, we're calling it the Silver Hill or the Etobicoke Center New Elementary School. It would be a large JK to 8 school, and it is priority number 4 out of the 5 that we last submitted. So given that it takes 4 to 5 years to build a new school once we get funding, the sooner we get this school approved, the better, because we will have sufficient kids for a viable school, 4 to 5 years from now.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope the ministry's listening.
Thank you, Trustee Laskin. Next, we have Trustee McLean, and then after that, Trustee Arts.
Thank you, and through the chair. I want to share Mr. Gaddy's gratitude to all the members of the committee who worked. We had multiple meetings. There weren't great solutions, and we struggled, and we walked away and gave it some more thought and came back with different ideas. School council chair and the community came and they advocated, and they came to the meeting and they asked great questions, and it was a great discussion. And many had shared their advocacy in advance, so we knew the challenges of what was going on. It is a small building, and the challenges in the building are real. That being said, Wedgwood has my long-term planning meetings. It has been on the agenda at the front of those meetings since I became the trustee 5.5 years ago. So we've been looking at this, watching this. A lot of the future growth, there's been a big area just south that along for the people who know the area, in the Cloverdale section, and along Dundas and the reconfiguration of the Kipling-Dundas area, and all of that growth is scheduled to go to Wedgwood. And when you start to look at what's roughly projected from those areas and that growth that we expect to come in the next 7 to 8 years, you start getting those numbers that are really challenging. And if you take those numbers and extrapolate to account for all those students, you might hypothetically need 20 to 25 portables. But I was never in a meeting where that number was talked about. It was never deemed to be that wasn't the solution we were all working towards. I was very excited earlier this year when we established and we supported the staff position that the Silver Hills site would be one of to be the number 4 and a 5 of the 5 submitted, and it will. It actually, the Silver Hills site exists in the north end of Trustee Nunziata's ward, but we have a site there, and we're hoping to have a JK to 8 that will deal with much of the new air growth and a redistribution of the challenges that are currently going on at Wedgwood. The switch over time will actually create some challenges at West Glen because there are just simply the amount of students coming into the area. But we are hopeful that the Ministry of Education will support the request and that we will be able to deal with the student accommodation before it becomes a challenge at West Glen, which is also an elementary school, and the nearby middle school of Bloor Lee, that if nothing is done, will have significant challenges and the need of portables on their site to deal with the accommodation. We got great feedback. Like it was shared, the majority of people that responded to the survey indicated they were in support. It's not going to fix the problem and the present day challenges overnight. There were no overnight perfect solutions, but everybody worked really hard to do what was possible as quickly as possible, to be as impactful as possible. And in terms of, there's been talk about nearby areas, it borders the 427, if you like. So there are some schools further west of the 427 that may have some room, but aren't viable options for the moving of students in this case. So as the crow flies, you might think that this becomes a decent option, but the reality is that we're never sending students over the 400 series highway to go to school in a different area. So again, I thank the staff that worked really hard on this, all the parents that advocated, that shared their perspectives, and this will benefit the community, and the announcement that we're all hoping for of the new school on the Silver Hills site really will be the solution to the ever-growing problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee McLean. I just want to give everybody an idea of what's happening. We'll go to Trustee Arts and finish that, and we'll hopefully finish this item, at which point we will put this meeting into recess and go to our special meeting, and then we will come back when we're finished our business of that meeting back into this meeting. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up, and we will move over to Trustee Arts right now. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I just had a quick question about I know you've grandfathered in the existing students, or you're going with a gentle change, but because West Glen's closer to a lot of the families, will they be able to opt to change schools if they wanted to?
Through the chair, yes, they'll be able to go to West Glen if that is their preference.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Arts. I don't see any other questions online or in here. The chair is back. I'll pass the chair back. No more questions.
I need a mover and a seconder for this. Trustee McLean. Trustee Hastings, thank you. Thank you. We have Trustee McLean and Hastings, and we will now open the vote on 7.1.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Shan in favor.
Cherneslin in favor.
Trustee
in
Williams.
favor.
Trustee Williams in favor.
Wong in favor.
Ghost in favor.
She was in favor. Trustee Hastings moved it. Trustee Hastings, can we officially have your vote? I know you moved it, but I'm being asked for your vote.
Already done.
Pardon?
I did it through,
Oh, it's come through now. It wasn't showing up. Trustee Patel?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. I think we have everybody now. Okay, thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder to move into recess, please? And King and Pay. Thank you, trustees King and Pay. Okay, we are now in recess. And we're just going to need a moment to switch meetings.